Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Hope you had a happy and healthy and safe holiday weekend. I certainly did. Had an amazing start to the new year. Got some nice relaxation time, even when the NBA refuses to allow us to have that time. Trying to fit it in. Mike, you got around the planet another year around the solar system. Celebrate a birthday. You got to be feeling pretty good. How you doing, my man?
Not great actually. Lost 2 fantasy championships yesterday. That sucked. It's pretty crappy birthday. No, I had fun. And then I woke up today that I forgot I had a scheduled outage for my internet. Totally forgot, so it threw my whole morning off. It's been great, but happy birthday to me.
Well, hopefully the Monday Injury Report will bring lots of happy birthday gifts for you. There's a lot to talk about here. It's a big slate. We've got 10 games on the slate, so a lot of action, a lot of teams moving in and out. I do think from the health and safety protocols part of the season that we've kind of endured the last few weeks, I think we're getting towards the tail end of it. We'll see if there's big reinfection issues and different things that we'd have to deal with potentially more down the road. But a lot of teams have cycled through and are starting to get players back. We're starting to see some. It's still a mix and match. Some teams are still decimated, but some teams are have gone through it, gotten all their guys back. Almost everybody's gotten into health and safety protocols at some point. So the hope is that you can't keep getting back into health and safety protocols. But we will see. With that said, let's get into it. The first team that I want to talk about is Portland. They're one of the late games tonight, and they're without Dame Lillard. And they are getting some players back, like Robert Covington's back, but their main 3 usage guys, McCollum, Lillard, and Nurkic. Nurkic is listed as doubtful, but I really would be shocked if he played. Not the doubtful tag alone is a good indication he's not going to play, but also Nurk is a guy who has struggled with conditioning throughout his career. So I just imagine it's going to be a return to conditioning situation when he does play, that it takes some time, get some practice time, get some reps, and then he's kind of back in the fold. How do you expect? They do have Anthony Simmons back, so they have somebody that will take a lot of shots along with Norm Powell in this situation. But how do you expect the Blazers to try to compensate for the loss of Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and Yusuf Nurkic tonight?
Well, they do have Robert Covington, you mentioned, back, and Simon's back. Those are 2 really big pieces. Both those guys I would expect to start with Nazir Little at the 3, Norm Powell at the 2, and then you'd go to Larry Nance again at the 5 because you kind of have to. And those guys should play quite a bit. Simons, will see. He got a pretty quick clearance, so he could be full go. Covington was a little bit longer. He may not be quite as a full go. We saw Ben McLemore shoot really well in a blowout loss to the Lakers over the weekend, so he would be looking at minutes. They'd probably run a little bit of overlap with Dennis Smith Jr., so he'd be kind of the 6th, 7th-ish man with McLemore, and then they'd fill it in with Reggie Perry behind Nance, and that's pretty much mostly your 8-man. They'll probably bring CJ Ellaby in. They really like him as kind of a combo wing as well. But it should be pretty tight up top.
Yeah, so you could see really, really heavy minutes numbers for the main Portland guys, as long as they can keep the game competitive. And that is a question mark without Dame, without CJ, without Nurkic. They're going to face a Hawks team that, from the health and safety protocols, they're starting to get guys back. They, Kevin Huerter's not listed. Danilo Gallinari's not listed. Onyeka Okongwu is not listed. So this team that we talked about kind of all season long, that was so deep, and we thought was one of the reasons that they would be successful during the course of the regular season, they just got ravaged for a 2-week period between injuries and health and safety protocols. They're on their way back. They're still going to be without Bogdan Bogdanovic. They're still going to be without John Collins. They're still without DeAndre Hunter, who they're going to be without for a while as he recovers from the wrist injury issue. So how do you think this impacts the stuff from a DFS perspective? What do you think the starters are going to be? I assume it'll be Trey. Do you think Huerter comes right back into a starting role alongside Reddish? And then what do you think they do at that 3-4 spot, Reddish and who? And obviously Capella. Gallinari, I don't think would move into a starting role, would be my guess. I think they like him off the bench. So how do you think they approach this spot?
Yeah, they like Lou and Gallo together off the bench. That would make a lot of sense. I still think it'll be Wes Iwundu
Yeah.
over
They also got TLC back as well.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Okay, so
So
if he's good to
TLC
go, it would
could be
probably
in
be
the
him.
mix too.
Yeah. Yep. It would probably be TLC then over Iwundu, who's 10 days eventually going to run out pretty soon. So, yeah, they're pretty close to being back, just besides Bogdanovich and Collins, really, and Jang, which is hit or miss.
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see, like, if Atlanta can get on a run just from a real basketball like playoff perspective, because they've really dipped down the standings when they've been decimated here, and they got off to such a slow start this year that it's they really have a lot of heavy lifting still to do. Okay, other big names that will be without on this slate: Kristaps Porzingis went into health and safety protocols. So the Mavs, who had just gotten Luka Doncic back, now have to ship Kristaps right back to health and safety protocols. They're also without Trey Burke, Willie Cauley-Stein, Boban Marjanovic. So in this spot, without KP, we did not see the high-end minutes for Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber over the weekend without KP. Do you think we get back to that? I mean, they got Bullock back, they got Kleber back. Mm-hmm. They do have some rotation bodies back, but in the past, we've seen those minutes get really up there for some of these guys like Kleber and DFS. When Kristaps has sat, do they have that ceiling potential tonight?
I think so. Probably not quite as much because they do have a lot of depth, as you mentioned, but it should be pretty similar run it back scenario. I would expect the same starting lineup here without KP, with a decent amount of Bullock. They're gonna, let's see, who are they playing today? I forget. They are playing Denver. So yeah, they're gonna want to run pretty big. So yeah, you'd probably see it, and Kleber would probably be one of the main guys guarding Jokic. So he could see a lot of minutes here in this matchup. They really like him as their really best defender. So yeah, definitely expecting a lot of Kleber minutes.
Yeah, and their options at center are a little bit thinned out. No Cauley-Stein, no Boban. So you've got Dwight Powell and then Moses Brown, who I don't think they're super comfortable playing a lot of minutes, especially against Jokic. Then Marquise Chris, who's like a 4 or 5, more of a 5, but also defensively a little bit limited in terms of post-up defense, which is really the thing you need kind of going up against Jokic. And so this could be a situation where you could see a lot more of Kleber. And you could see Dwight Powell's minutes get extended a little bit, assuming he could stay out of foul trouble, just because I think the matchup demands it. You can't play the small ball lineups as much, and Moses Brown and Marquise Chris might have a tougher time kind of on Jokic, who should play a ton of minutes for Denver.
Yep.
Pistons side of things, still no Jeremy Grant. That's going to be a while on the Jeremy Grant front, but you're getting Cade Cunningham back, and I think that's and Killian Hayes. So really big deal for the Pistons in terms of having added guard depth, which they had been decimated by. They were without Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes, Corey Joseph. You saw Cassius Stanley and Derek Walton Jr. playing tons of minutes. That's not the scenario that they envisioned. It was Stanley, Walton Jr., and Justin Robinson as like the backcourt options last time out. So getting Cade Cunningham and getting Killian Hayes back is really huge for the Pistons.
Yeah, getting Josh Jackson back, getting Saban Lee back, getting Trey Lyles back. They're getting pretty much everyone back here, with the exception of like Corey Joseph and a couple others. So yeah, I would expect Cade to get thrown back into the fire. Obviously, some garbage time. I did the Detroit minutes, took a few minutes off the upside for conditioning and for the blowout risk. Killian Hayes, I expect him to start. Expect to see Saban Lee off the bench to really split those point guard minutes. And then you're going to see Rodney Magruder, who's also back. He'll be kind of the backup wing. I mentioned Josh Jackson. And Trey Lyles will probably cover all the non-Luka guards at center minutes. Maybe a little bit of overlap. They do want to bring Jamarco Pickett in the rotation, but they could go 9. We know Casey likes to go 10. So we'll see. But I'm definitely expecting pretty good minutes. We'll see if they can hang with the Bucks. That spread's pretty big, so certainly could be some blowout there.
Do you expect Garza to start there, or do you think Lyles?
I think so. Okay. I think it makes sense just to start him. He's been comfortable with that role. He's been playing pretty well for them, playing a lot too. So I think it just makes sense to kind of keep him starting and go from there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the biggest one, just like thinking through, because Lyles is usually pretty cheap in these spots and can rack up points in a hurry. But if he doesn't have the like low 30s minute ceiling scenario, which he probably doesn't with them prioritizing Garza's development, unless Garza got into foul trouble really quickly.
Yeah, and I think Diallo would pick up the garbage time too, so that's a little bit of a thorn in his side.
Okay. Grizzlies, they have been like all year long, it seems like they've been kind of managing some big injury issues. They started the year without Dylan Brooks. and they went through a period of time where they were without John Morant. Then as they started to get kind of healthier with John Morant, they lost kind of all their guards, and now they're losing all their wings. And so they have, no Kyle Anderson now, still no DeAnthony Melton, still no Dylan Brooks. How are they going to cover these wing minutes today? What do you expect Memphis to do to try to get around this injury situation that has all kind of hit the 2 and the 3 and the 4 spots for them all simultaneously?
Yeah, they started Kyle Anderson at the 3. He's out. They've been starting Dylan Brooks before that. He's out. They started Conchar in the mix in there. He's out. So they are running out of all of their small forwards here. So we know Bane's a very capable guy to guard some threes. I'd expect him to start there, and I think it would make sense to start Tyus Jones. The last game, Taylor Jenkins closed. He's really leaned into playing Tyus with Ja, and I expect him to do that again. So a lot of minutes for him. Maybe Tyrell Terry gets in the mix. We've seen Santi Aldama be, kind of when Kyle Anderson was out, they kind of slid him in his rotation spot. This is like a month ago or so.
Yeah.
So I expect Aldama to kind of be the backup 3, maybe get some minutes in there. They're running a lot of Brandon Clark, Killian Tilly, kind of 3-4 combos as well. So that'll help fill some minutes. They don't have Xavier Tillman, so they're going to really have to stretch Clark and Tilly a little bit. So yeah, those are all guys that should be playing pretty good minutes. And I don't think Jenkins could go 10. He loves to go 10 all the time, but he's probably going to have to go 9, maybe even 8, but probably 9.
Yeah. The Memphis roster is one that's kind of tricky because the way that they draft is they just draft best player available, and they just let's figure it out from there. And the last few years, that's been a lot of smaller 5s and then 4 or 5-ish guys like Brandon Clark, Xavier Tillman. And so when you've got Jaren Jackson and you've got Steven Adams, and then your guys behind them are Tilly, Clark, Tillman, it's overloaded at the 5 spot, and you're sliding some of those guys over at the 4 to puncture some minutes there, but you can't move any of these guys to the 3. They can't really play the 3. So, you could see Desmond Bane play 38 minutes tonight. It would not surprise me. They're pretty shorthanded. They've been playing really, really well. So it's a spot where I would expect to see them extend the rotation a little bit to continue trying to, keep winning streaks and playing well alive, but also to try to just kind of get through this spot. And it's against Brooklyn in Brooklyn. It's a tough matchup. There's not going to be Kyrie Irving tonight because it's in Brooklyn. And he is aiming for rejoining the team on Wednesday is the hope there. But, KD, James Harden, not the duo you kind of want to see when you're down wing defenders. Generally. So should be a little bit of a tougher spot for the Grizzlies tonight. All right, let's talk about Charlotte. They are one of the teams that, as I talked about kind of at the beginning of the show, that they went through the really heavy on the health and safety protocol stuff. And then they kind of got, through most of it. And then a few guys got thrown on the end, PJ Washington and Miles Bridges of late. Got Bridges back, still no PJ Washington, but this is pretty close to fully healthy for Charlotte now. And they haven't played in super competitive games. They got wrecked by Phoenix of late, so we haven't seen the ability for the rotation to get really tight again. But I think as these guys build up their conditioning that have been away, I think we're going to probably get there again, where you get back to the 9-man rotation, 8.5-man rotation from Borrego. It's a little bit tighter. Without PJ Washington, how do you think those minutes get filled for Charlotte?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. Should see a little bit more of Miles Bridges. Again, they kind of got blown out. Obviously, minutes to get high, so should be fine in back-to-back. Probably see a little bit more out of Plumlee. They are playing so they can get away going small. So I would expect, they're not going to miss PJ Washington too much. They'll play a lot of Jalen McDaniels off the bench. Cody Martin and Kelly Oubre would be the main guys in the 8-man, and then everything else just be scraps. But it could be pretty tight if this game's close. Yeah.
And you just look at that roster and you're just not that far away from that normal 9-man with Hayward, Bridges, Plumlee, Ball, Rozier, McDaniels, Martin, Washington, and Oubre. That we're not that far away from that. So Charlotte's one of these teams that looks like we're getting a little bit closer back to normal, still without PJ Washington tonight, though. Chicago is a team that, has had their ups and downs with the health and safety protocols. They kind of got bailed out by the league by having some games suspended that they didn't have to play when they were really ravaged. And then as soon as they got healthy, everybody that they've played has been super ravaged. They've worked through a tough back-to-back set with DeMar DeRozan buzzer beaters over the weekend. They get Lonzo Ball back tonight. So they're still, they were a thin team after the loss of Patrick Williams early in the season. And they've kind of withstood the health and safety protocol stuff now. They got Lonzo back. They're still short Caruso, who's still out with an injury. But now you've got DeMar, Levine, Lonzo, Vooch. Kobe White's been playing well and playing full minutes at this point. You start to have the semblance of like a little bit of a more normal rotation. How do you assume Lonzo Ball, who do you think will get cut most from the rotation with his return?
Yeah, got to think Kobe White's getting cut down pretty hard. They said they like him off the bench. Obviously, Lonzo's going to start, so I would imagine it's him. They will go small a little bit, so you could still maybe 5 minutes. I was a little surprised that Derrick Jones Jr. got up to 28 minutes after they had capped him pretty hard from his hamstring injury, so that was interesting because they're a little thin at the 4, but I'd expect them to use their guard depth to kind of help fill minutes. We know they could certainly get away with it, in certain spots, but Magic pretty big. Would expect them to start airplane mode for most of those minutes there. But Kobe's going to be cut down pretty hard, do you think?
The thing that we know about the Bulls,
the
thing that we know about the Bulls in the past is that they were willing to play Caruso like really heavy minutes in these small ball lineups. The difference is Caruso is a very, very skilled defender and a very good team defender. Kobe White struggles on that end of the floor. So I don't think Kobe White has the same kind of minute ceiling that we saw from Alex Caruso when the Bulls were similarly healthy and they had Caruso, but not Kobe White. I think it's a little bit different there. I do think the length and size of Lonzo allows them to play some interesting lineup combinations, but I think Kobe White is probably going to settle into the mid to upper 20s instead of like the low 30s that Caruso was able to get up to in these situations. Similarly in the past, because Caruso is just such a much more skilled defender.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about their opponent, the Magic, who are getting Mo Bamba back. And this is, the Magic have been decimated. There's still no Cole Anthony. He's still out with injury. But they got Mo Bamba back. They've had Franz Wagner the whole time. Mo Wagner is questionable on the injury report, so you might sub out Mo Wagner for Mo Bamba in a swap of Mo's. And they got Terrence Ross back over the weekend, so they're getting a little bit healthier here. The rotation is still a little shaky on the guard spots just because without Cole Anthony, without Jalen Suggs, they're trying to fill things with like Tim Frazier. We saw RJ Hampton's minutes just disappear out of nowhere last game. So how do you think Mo Bamba, we saw 18 minutes last time out. Do you think he's still under some sort of conditioning cap? He's a guy that has had conditioning issues during his career.
Yeah, a lot of conditioning issues, a lot of injury history. So I would expect kind of a week-long ramp-up on him. So, back-to-back as well. We'll see how he responds. Probably gets into the 20s today. They're going to need his size and rebounding and everything in this matchup. Probably won't be a play if his price is anywhere close to where it was. And, Wendell Carter Jr. playing 41 minutes yesterday was crazy. So, and Wagner played pretty well in the Jaylen Brown bust-out 50 game. But, a lot of Gary Harris minutes, a lot of Tim Frazier minutes. It'd probably be a little bit more even. I didn't watch this game. I actually didn't watch match basketball yesterday. But, I would expect RGB up a little bit, but certainly not enough to play him. They really like Tim Frazier, it looks like. Yeah,
Frazier getting the bulk of those minutes last game, not doing much with them. They're willing to run a lot of offense through their bigs now with Wendell Carter Jr. And, man, you look at the Magic and that rebuild and trading Vooch for Wendell Carter Jr. and the pick that ended up being Franz Wagner looks really, really, really good. Tough season for the Magic, but that's definitely something you have to look forward to. In terms of other players coming back, we've got Draymond Green coming back for Golden State. Short period into health and safety protocols, just a few games there. Golden State is now largely healthy. Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins back, Draymond Green back. We're less than a week away from Klay Thompson back, hopefully, targeting the 8th. So hopefully we'll get Klay back this weekend as well. That'll be super exciting to see. How do you expect Draymond being back impacts the Warriors tonight?
Yeah, so adding Draymond's defense, you don't really need Gary Payton as much. So I would expect Jordan Poole came off the bench the last game. I would expect him to get back in the starting lineup. Obviously, Otto Porter Jr. goes back to the bench. So we'll see Otto, probably get. It's crazy to Otto play that many minutes with 36. Yeah. So he'll be more in the low 20s again. Obviously, Draymond affecting him the most. May not need Kuminga. Iguodala, man, huge game from him.
He's great.
Yeah, big shots, and that guy's so good, man. But expect those guys to get cut down. Maybe one Toscano Anderson is kind of fringy rotation as well.
Yeah. I look at that box score and I look at what the Warriors have done this year without Klay, and in this instance without Dre. And I think, man, remember in the preseason when we were talking about how the Warriors and Lakers like implied totals, win totals were like shockingly the same, and or the Lakers were ahead by like 3 wins, and we're like, we give more wins with the Warriors. Look at how deep this roster is, man.
Yeah.
Otto Porter Jr., Juan Toscano Anderson, Andre Iguodala, Bielitsa, these dudes can all play. Like they're veteran players that can all play. The Warriors did an incredible job overhauling the back end of their bench this offseason, and they're reaping the rewards with the best record in the NBA as a result, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the Rockets, because that was one of the weirdest stories over the weekend that happened. Kevin Porter Jr. went like half Antonio Brown, I guess, maybe not full Antonio Brown, and just left the team in the middle of the game. Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. have both been suspended now for their roles over the weekend. Eric Gordon is questionable. I mean, you could be in a situation where basically the 3 main guys that take shots normally for Houston are all not there. We'll see on Gordon's availability. What do you think if Gordon's able to play tonight? And if he's not, like, what do you think this Houston team looks like if they were without KPJ, Eric Gordon, and Christian Wood?
Yeah, after the game, Stephen Silas's presser was pretty hilarious answering those questions. But something that wasn't related to KPJ and Wood was Jalen Green playing the point, and he said he really liked that role. So I expect a really big role for Jalen Green. Obviously, if Eric Gordon's out, even bigger. But if Eric Gordon even can go, I would expect Jalen Green to run a lot of the offense. Obviously, you're losing a guy like Christian Wood and replacing him for Daniel Tice, who, again, Stephen Silas used 2 names that he likes to use Tice with. That was Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. So he gets Embiid today. We expect a ton of minutes from Tice. I think he'd be in play. They seem to like bringing kind of Tate, mix and match him with the second unit. They went a little bit bigger in this game. But yeah, I would expect pretty good amount of Tate, pretty good amount of Nwaba, especially if Gordon can't go. They've used Nwaba as a 2 through 4. So that would help them there. KJ Martin also would be helping because you'd be using Nwaba more of a guard. So that would open up more minutes at the 4. So maybe those guys get into play. Certainly have to worry about garbage time against the 76ers team that's starting to look pretty close to full.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the more interesting spots on the slate because guys are going to be cheap relative to the opportunity available, but the minutes are going to be difficult to project because the game's probably going to get out of hand. Houston's willing to play a lot of guys, and the foul risk of anybody trying to guard Embiid. So I think this will be one of the more interesting spots to try to narrow down. I did have to have a little bit of a chuckle at the Jalen Green point guard as your mouse cursor hovered over the 1 assist in the 28 minutes for Jalen Green and the 14 free throw attempts and 13 field goal attempts. Jalen Green could take a ton of shots tonight. I don't think they'll be particularly efficient against the Philadelphia defense, but he could take a ton of shots tonight. It will be important to pay attention to Eric Gordon's availability for Houston for sure.
Thanks, Antonio Brown. I lost my my fantasy championship by 2 points, and I had Antonio Brown. So why did I do that?
That's tough. All right, some questionable tags that we have on the slate to walk through tonight. Brandon Ingram for the Pelicans. When we woke up today, Jonas Valanciunas was not expected to play, but he did clear health and safety protocols. So Joe Val is in. The question is, will they get Brandon Ingram as well? Tough matchup with the Jazz tonight. This went from a game that like we were thinking for sure is going to carry some blowout risk when you're without Joe Val and Ingram to like, oh, maybe they'll have both guys and that could be a better environment to potentially attack. What are your thoughts on Ingram and his availability tonight? We know that New Orleans has been super, super cautious with Ingram questionable tags this year.
Yeah, Achilles soreness for him, so we'll see. I don't have a great read on it. He's been out for almost a week with this injury. They're going to be cautious, as you said, but I mean, it took him. That injury had like in late October, early November. It took him forever.
It took him about 10 days. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a way more severe injury. So probably thinking out, we're going to probably project him in. But obviously you saw Garrett Temple step up in minutes. More shots for Josh Hart, ball handling for Josh Hart, Devontae Graham also. Herb Jones has been actually producing on offense lately too. But yeah, getting Joe Val back would certainly cut out Jackson Hayes, who's been playing well. I had probably the best game of his career over the weekend. So we'll see if that gets split up. They obviously are pretty high on Jackson Hayes, younger player. So we'll see how those minutes get split.
Shout out to Nikki Alexander-Walker, who missed our points over prop by half, despite shooting 4 for 16 and taking 13 of his 16 shots as threes. Nikki Alexander-Walker, apparently thinking he's Steph Curry out there these days, really kind of missed some of that mid-range game and some of that like herky-jerky hesitation stuff that the Alexander Walker boys have not seen it from Nikhil in the second in the second season.
And don't forget 1 from 3 from the freaking line. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, tough times out there for Nikhil, but he's one of those guys that can fill usage in those spots, and because he can fill usage and he can do a lot of things, he has a ceiling to him.
And they just now Anthony Tolliver cleared protocols. He was on a 10-day for the Pelicans, but he got COVID and never played. So the Pelicans might bring him back. We'll see if his team can play. It is a home game.
We did touch on the Pistons earlier, but at the Dynasty watching was asking if Hamidou Diallo is still going to start. Mm-hmm. What is your expectation on starters for Detroit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was starting pretty much since the Jeremy Grant injury went down, so I would expect it to be Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Hamidou Diallo, Sadiq Bey, and then I think Luka Garza, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I feel pretty good about those 4 perimeter guys.
Agreed. Okay, other questionables on the slate. Chris Middleton is questionable with personal reasons for Milwaukee, so not an injury situation that we can really speculate on. It's certainly a situation with Milwaukee where they are comfortable playing without Middleton. We saw, Giannis just go ham. Jrue Holiday, his ceiling increases as well. They have a lot of offensive options that they can run through as they've gotten pretty healthy here with Portis and DeMarcus Cousins and Connaughton and Grayson Allen and Dante DiVincenzo and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's an interesting spot for the Milwaukee guys if Middleton does not play. What are your thoughts on his availability tonight?
Yeah, personal reasons, so I don't really have a read on it. Hopefully just one game. Hopefully everything's okay with him. But Dante DiVincenzo turned his ankle in warmups. He got listed as out. He was kind of a late-ish scratch, kind of came out of nowhere, but that's why. But we saw Jordan Nwora fill some minutes, Pat Connaughton as well. Nwora kind of got hot late to keep him going. They don't really want to up. We saw Rodney Hood get back in the rotation for a little bit, but that doesn't really matter. It would make Connaughton somewhat relevant. Bobby Portis is back too. So they're also, getting kind of back to full strength as well.
Okay, let's talk about Lamarcus Aldridge. He's also questionable for Brooklyn tonight. His presence I don't think it has like a huge impact on things, but they've been starting him. He is a usage guy. It would take a little bit of extra usage for Harden and Durant if Lamarcus was unable to go. We've seen they've been very comfortable with Claxton. They even started the two alongside each other in the first game that they got all the COVID protocols guys back. So what do you think on LMA tonight? And if he does go, do you expect him to start, or do you think there's a chance that they go back to their original plan, I think, coming into the season, which was LMA off the bench as like a second unit volume guy and move Claxton in that starting lineup?
Yeah, so Steve Nash had some pretty crazy quotes that are terrifying as far as us doing minutes projections, because he basically said he wants to just try different lineups right now. So we saw them, go big against the Sixers and then go smaller here, which was kind of expected given the matchup. So now, do they go back to going big again? I wouldn't honestly be surprised if they start James Johnson next to Daddy Clax, or if they start LMA. So yeah, when that starting lineup comes out, we are almost certainly going to be moving the minutes projection. Obviously, we've seen Blake kind of get cut down, but obviously if LMA doesn't play, given the matchup, you think that Daddy Clax, who has played some pretty big minutes lately, but he played 33 against the 76ers, 30 in the Clippers game, 3 games ago, so he would really benefit.
Yeah, definitely a chance. Claxton's been coming on strong. That's kind of the plan that they think they had coming into the year, was to develop Claxton to eventually be that like defensive rim runner verticality that James Harden loves to play with. To prepare for the playoffs, and it got sidetracked early in the season by injuries and illness, as Claxton missed a lot of time with a mysterious illness that cost him a ton of weight. He's back in shape now. The minutes have been back. LMA is out. He's an interesting guy to keep an eye on tonight for sure. Some other questionables on the list, some smaller ones, but I do think they impact things. For the Jazz, Hassan Whiteside is questionable. When Whiteside has been out, we've seen Rudy Gobert's minutes really spike up. So that's one to keep an eye on in a matchup against the Pelicans, who could be very inefficient offensively tonight, especially if they're without Brandon Ingram. And they could need a lot of minutes from the center spot going up against Jonas Valanciunas, who's back. So Gobert's in an interesting spot for ceiling tonight if Whiteside can't go.
Yeah, worth noting that Quinn Snyder was not happy with you see that Rudy Gay minus 19 after the game. Quinn Snyder was talking about how they got killed in pick and roll. Obviously, really good opponent in Golden State here. But yeah, he was basically like, it was he called it self-explanatory why they had to do it. He was kind of, not very Quinn Snyder. Like Quinn Snyder's usually just the old coach speak guy But it's interesting to hear him talk about that. So yeah, as you said, the takeaway here is could see a lot of Rudy Gobert minutes.
Yeah. Also for the Clippers, Nicholas Batum is questionable. The Clippers have gotten a little bit healthier getting Reggie Jackson out of health and safety protocols. There's going to be a ramp up period for him as well. But Nicholas Batum allows them to play different lineup combinations. And with the center health issues that they have, without Zubats, without Hartenstein, they could really use having Nicholas Batum available. What do you think his chances of playing tonight are?
Yeah, we'll see. I think he's got a pretty good shot to play. I'd expect a pretty hard cap on him. I did their minutes. I think I went like 20. But again, they only really have one center in Serge, and they want to play Serge a lot. I mean, they were missing Marcus Morris, and he only played 22 minutes, wasn't in foul trouble, kept his minutes down. We saw a lot of Winslow, saw a lot of Amir Coffey, saw a little bit of James Ennis. So Ennis would go a little bit if Batum did come back. And then, we saw Eric Bledsoe start for Luke Kennard, who's out for protocol. So would probably expect it to happen again. We know that Ty Lue's also out, but Brian Shaw, he says he talks to him, pretty much constantly. So I would expect Eric Bledsoe to get the start again. Played really well, much to the chagrin of our under on his prop. But we'll see a lot of Terrence Mann as well. But Coffey should come back to the bench with Marcus Morris going out there. So I'd expect it to be Reggie Jackson, Bledsoe, Terrence Mann, Morris, and then I would expect Ibaka to start, and then a lot of Nick Batum probably playing straight center.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, the two teams that have not filed tonight, just to note that we didn't touch on them from the injury perspective, but Miami and Minnesota, those two teams have been ravaged with injuries and health and safety protocols. So a lot could change there in terms of who's available. Minnesota in particular, they just got Anthony Edwards back. They got Taurean Prince and Jared Vanderbilt back. There's, they're not too far away. I don't think, D'Angelo Russell and Cat. So those could shake up the slate really dramatically if you get some of those big players back in the mix. Disappointing loss last night, but we saw Naz Reid put up a really big fantasy effort. We saw Anthony Edwards have really big usage, didn't shoot the ball very effectively, but had the usage. It looked like Bev putting up a big line all around. Kind of a tighter rotation as they're starting to get healthier and get some of these guys back. So just beware of Minnesota because the projections could move quite a bit based on anyone else kind of getting brought into the mix. And then on the Miami side, they've been ravaged with health and safety protocols, obviously. So anybody that they can get back is probably taking minutes away from some of these guys they just signed off the street, essentially, and deepening things out. Anything else to add on Minnesota or Miami tonight?
We'll see what's up with Cat and D'Lo. They've got to be getting pretty close. There was some Jaden McDaniels foul trouble. So Taurean Prince is actually out of the rotation for the first quarter, and they got put in when he picked up another foul. Jaden, so keep an eye on that. His minutes could be up a little bit more. And you could see Miami. I mean, they really leaned on their starters in the last game, and that's a pretty good starting unit right there, right? Lowry, Hero, Jimmy Butler. They love Caleb Martin, and then Omer 7. Smash Omer.
It's just the bench. The bench is four guys that they just signed in the last week. So if they can get anybody back at all, that would shift probably Martin back to the bench and then take minutes from these bench guys. And if they got one like normal rotation player back for some reason, I think you could cut out two of the bench guys almost immediately.
Well, they wouldn't cut out one guy, right?
Yeah, they'd still have one guy on the bench. No, I think Highsmith, Silva, Stauskas, I think those guys are very, very at risk of losing playing time if the Heat could get anybody back at this point.
Sounds good.
Okay. That'll do it for us on the injury report analysis show. We will be back behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern tonight with myself and Gary Hartman covering all the DFS implications of the slate. If you are subscribed to Established Run's NBA product, you will be able to join us at 5 o'clock Eastern. So make sure you get your subscription. If you do not have a subscription and are uninterested in paying for that premium content, you could at least subscribe for free to our YouTube channel here. Make sure you get all the notifications of when we go live. Also, continue to support the work that we're doing, putting out this free content each and every Monday through Friday, weekday at 2 o'clock Eastern. We will be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern to cover a much, much smaller slate, hopefully with fewer health and safety protocols information. But in the meantime, enjoy the games. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will see you tomorrow.